Be Wealthy and Smart, episode 521.
Step into a world of wealth and financial freedom without budgets, boredom, or bosses on Be Wealthy and Smart. And now, here's your host, Linda P. Jones.
Welcome to Be Wealthy and Smart. I'm Linda P. Jones, America's Wealth Mentor, empowering women and men worldwide to financial freedom. On today's show, we're going to talk about the top performing sector ETFs. And although this is just 1 month into the year, it's very exciting to see some trends lining up. And these are trends that we've been talking about here on Be Wealthy and Smart and over in the VIP experience. So it's really cool to see some of our favorites at the very top. So this comes to us from Investors Business Daily, and it's through January 30th. So this is just 1 month's performance. And I just want to caution you and say, we can't take anything out of 1 month's performance, okay? We're long-term investors here. We look out 3 to 5 years. The reason I'm giving you 1 month's performance is because some of the things that we've been talking about on Be Wealthy and Smart for the last 3 years are actually at the top of this, not only on a 1 month basis, but also on a 3-year basis. But on a 1 month basis, you can tell what's hot right now, and it can also tell you maybe how the year might be lining up for some of these top performing ETFs. So we're not going to read anything into this 1 month performance number, but I wanted to give it to you because it does show a continuation of a trend that we've been talking about. So what do I mean? Well, first of all, the number one sector in January was our favorite, MJ, the cannabis ETF. It was up 35.6% year to date. Now, this isn't the time to be jumping in after you've had a month like that. You actually have had more than a year's performance in 1 month. That is a spectacular number, 35%. So I caution anyone who is thinking about jumping in right now to buy it, because I really think we are due for a pullback. And I think that you'll have a much better opportunity to buy it lower if you wait and buy it on the pullback. But then again, I'm not giving you advice whether to buy it or not. We're just talking about what has been performing. And since we have been talking about MJ since the fourth quarter of 2018, I did want to share with you the fact that it was the best performer in January. Again, it had a really difficult December, sold off like everything else did in the market, but it rebounded the strongest of all sector ETFs in January. The second best performing sector was the SPDR S&P Oil and Gas Equipment and Services ETF, symbol XES, which was up 22.5% in January. Number 3 was the VanEck Vectors Oil Services, symbol OIH, up 21.9% in January. And the Invesco Solar, symbol TAN, up 21.2% in January. The iShares U.S. Oil Equipment and Services, symbol IEZ, up 21.2%. And that's pretty interesting to have oil and solar up at the top of the sector ETFs. That might be telling us that we might have a strong year for oil, but then again, oil can change very quickly, and it's hard to tell whether that's a longer-term trend for oil or not. So I tend not to try to predict the price of oil. Again, I'm looking for long-term investments for 3 to 5 years, trends that have high growth rates. And so for me, that's something that's much more cyclical and something that I think is very hard to predict on a 3 or 5 year basis. So I pretty much stay away from oil and oil service companies. The number 6 performing sector in January was the InfraCap MLP, symbol AMZA, up 20%. The 7th best performer was First Trust Natural Gas, symbol FCG, up 19.3%. The Invesco KBW Premium Yield Equity REIT, symbol KBWY, up 18.7%. Number 9 was the Global X MLP and Energy Infrastructure, MLPX is the symbol, up 16.9%. And rounding out the top 10, the Spider S&P Oil and Gas Explorer and Production ETF, symbol XOP, up 16.8%. So it does give us actually the top 20 for January. I'm just going to read to you the top 10, and I will put the chart in the show notes so you can see all of the top 20 if you want to. There are some other metals and mining, some oil and gas, a bank sector, a biotech sector, and things like that. So we do have a little bit more diversity in the bottom 10 of the top 20. Now, another interesting thing to note, besides MJ being the number one performer in January, was that our other favorite ETFs had a spectacular week last week and were the number one performers for the week. According to Investors Business Daily, GDXJ was the top performer for the week, up 7.3%, and GDX, our other favorite ETF, was the number 3 performer for the week in the top 10, up 6.6%. So interesting that 2 of our other favorite ETFs were the 1 week winners of all ETFs last week. Now again, this is very short-term information, and we're looking for 3 to 5 year investments. But it's exciting when you see your ETFs really take the lead in the short term. What does that tell you? That tells me that we're probably getting near a pullback, that we're probably getting some spectacular performance, and it's right about to have people take profits, and it's about to correct. So hang tight, and I think we're going to see some weakness into February. At least that's what the charts look like to me, where we're getting more into the overbought territory, and it looks like the chart is setting up for a pullback. This can be normal profit taking. It can be just part of the short-term cycle. Nothing goes up in a straight line. So we always see things run up and then pull back, and run up and pull back. And the time to buy them is not on the run up. And what I've just reported to you today is about the run up. So the time to buy things like this, especially when they're having spectacular performance like this, is to wait for the pullback. Because if you don't, you can suffer a 25 to 40% loss from the top very easily. And that's because these are so volatile and they're moving so much. And the profit already on MJ having gone up 35% in 1 month means that a lot of selling can take place for people to lock in those profits, and it can tumble back down just as easily as it went up. So again, I'm not giving investment advice. I'm reporting to you some ETFs that we've been following, some of my favorites from the VIP experience, some things that we are expecting on a 3 to 5 year basis to look like possibly a good investment for people that have the right risk appetite and have the right ability to hang in there through the ups and downs. If you already own these ETFs, I like to hang on through the ups and downs because it's very difficult to know exactly when to jump back in. And you can often sell at the top only to jump back in at a higher price because you didn't get the low to jump back in at correct. So what happens is people sell thinking they'll jump back in at a lower price. They forget, or they don't watch, or they don't realize where the low is. And then they wait thinking, oh, well, maybe it'll pull back again. And then guess what? It goes to another new high and you're buying in at a higher price. Rather than try to sell the high and jump back in at the low, I'm just cautioning people to look at their initial buy point. When you're initially getting in or when you're adding to your portfolio, you want to use pullbacks for those types of transactions. You want to look for where is their weakness in a strong performing ETF so that you can get in a little bit cheaper and maybe even a lot cheaper. But again, do your research. This is just the top of the funnel telling you where great performance is so you can do some research and decide if it's right for you. Just wanted to share with you that really exciting news and great news for the investments that we've been following and have been investing in. The cannabis stocks seem to be on fire. I think that this is something that reminds me of the internet stock trend back in the mid 90s when internet stocks started to come out and started to really take off. There were a lot of companies that came out that didn't survive in the long run. They were either gobbled up, they were merged into another company, or some of those weren't profitable and went out of business. That's why I'm not suggesting that you invest in individual cannabis stocks right now. I think it's too early in the trend to know who the winners are going to be. If I named a company called Spyglass, you probably have never heard of it, but it was one of the biggest deal, first moving internet stocks back in the 90s. People thought it had tremendous potential and it was going to be the next Google. Well, guess what? It wasn't. And there are all kinds of stories of companies like that are first movers that don't end up being the big winners. So don't get enamored with some of these companies that are getting huge valuations and don't have the earnings to deserve it. Having said that, some with deep pockets might have a better chance of survival, but those that are just short on shares and are being run up to the moon because of shorts having to cover their positions, that's just market manipulation. That is not showing us what a good long-term company looks like. So we don't want to get caught up in price movement of individual cannabis stocks. We want to own a group of cannabis stocks like we do with MJ, because in there are probably going to be some good winners, and in there might be some that get taken over, and in there might be some that don't perform so well because they're off doing some different things. Remember, in the cannabis ETF, symbol MJ, there's all kinds of companies in there. Some are direct growers of cannabis. Some might be bottlers of cannabis and just create the bottles. Some might just be the ones who are talking about fertilizing cannabis. There are different aspects of how to invest in cannabis. And some are investing more in the medical space, such as the CBD oil and pain relief, and the attempted cure of some diseases like epilepsy, arthritis, and other ailments that have been chronic for people. In fact, the stories coming out about childhood epilepsy and the strides that people are making from using cannabis is amazing. The stories about kids that had multiple seizures every day from epilepsy and then taking cannabis and having no seizures for weeks and possibly longer. These studies are really starting to come out with some great news, especially for these kids with epilepsy. And there's other ailments that it's working very well for as well. So we're watching that, but there's people that are focusing on certain diseases. There's people that are focusing on just chronic pain relief. There are companies that are focusing on different aspects of cannabis. And so it's not just easy to invest in this company or that company or to know who the long-term winner is going to be yet. I have my ideas about what space I think is going to be the winning space and what market I really want to be investing in, and maybe I'll share that with you later. There are all kinds of companies right now that are not really that exciting to me, but yet because they're one of the first movers in the cannabis space and they're in our MJ ETF, they're going to benefit from people buying that package of 30 companies in the ETF. So we want to just sit tight with MJ. I think that's the best way to invest in this space, is to invest in a whole group of companies. It's kind of like when you're a venture capitalist and you're investing in early stage companies. You don't invest in just one, because chances are several that you invest in aren't going to be viable and aren't going to work out long term. But that 10% of businesses that you invest in could be the home run companies. And it's the same thing with owning this package of cannabis stocks in MJ. Maybe not all of them are going to survive. Some of them will be taken over. Maybe even one or two might go out of business. Who knows? But there are going to be some long-term winners in there. And that's all we need for this to be a really good investment. But it is a very exciting growth space. Cannabis does remind me a lot of the internet space back in the 90s. And there was a lot of wealth created from owning those companies and watching those companies grow and owning the winners in that space. So the winners will show themselves more and more in time. But right now, things are very early since we still don't have marijuana legalized on a federal basis here in the United States. We do have it legalized in Canada. We have certain states that have recreational use approved. Other states have medical use approved. We have 33 states that have one or the other or both of those categories approved. So we're not quite there yet on the full legalization, but I think we're getting very close. And when that happens, it's going to make it a lot easier for cannabis companies to expand, to grow their business. We're going to see lots of mergers and acquisitions at that time because right now they might be only able to grow in a particular state, and each state is somewhat encapsulated and not able to really move across state lines. It depends on the laws of the particular state. So we're really seeing that we have these little monopolies in cannabis all over the United States, and we don't really have a cohesive way for a business to dominate the United States market yet. So that is yet to come once we get it legalized on a federal level. So we have lots of things that are catalysts that can propel these companies even further in the future. The legalization federally and the ability to grow nationwide. That is still ahead of us. Right now, we have cannabis companies that are really just trying to work their niche, work their state, get their systems down, maximize their production, their profitability, turn from a money-losing company to a profitable business, and also look at the partnerships that they're being offered to see who they want to partner with, and if they do want to partner. Because some companies have partnered with very deep pocket large companies, and they are now full of cash and they can turn around and make some acquisitions. But then again, it's still early, and so they may be waiting to make some acquisitions until we're in a more favorable phase and they can do that more on a nationwide basis. So there's lots of reporting to do yet in this sector, and I'll be here covering it for you, but this is one of the most exciting opportunities I have seen for a very long time. And again, this is not about the smoking of marijuana. For me, it's the medical marijuana uses and the exciting medical discoveries that are being touted and the studies that are being shared with us and the results that we're seeing for a lot of people that have been in pain or have had chronic illness, that we're seeing great results with the medical marijuana use. And don't forget, we still have our contest for reviews going on until the end of March. You have the ability to win 25 prizes, 11 of my Wealthy Mindset Blueprint audio sets valued at $197, 11 of my Wealth Heiress books, which I will personalize for you, and 3 people will have a 30-minute wealth mentoring session with me valued at $500. All you have to do is leave a review on the podcast. That will get your name in the drawing 5 times. Or leave a book review on Amazon. That will get your name in the drawing 7 times. And if you do both a podcast review and a book review, that gets your name in the drawing 10 times. And people that have already left reviews, I so appreciate you, and your name will also be entered in the drawing. We still have our survey out there for listeners. Thank you so much for everyone who's already filled it out. I'd still like to have more people fill it out. and get great feedback from you. I'm getting some good ideas of what you're looking for, what you're wanting from the podcast. That is the place to tell me what you'd like to hear me talk more about, what questions you have, what struggles you have. It's in the survey in the show notes. And if you haven't joined me over on Instagram, you can get daily wealth tips at instagram.com/Linda P. Jones. That's all for today. Until next time, live the good life and be wealthy and smart.
Thank you for listening to Be Wealthy and Smart with Linda P. Jones. Share the wealth and tell your family and friends about the show. Check out our website, blog, and social media for more riches at www.bewealthyandsmart.com.